Thank you for watching. Subscribe on Deceived Husbands for more stories. It all began when I found myself in an unusual spot, somewhere I'd typically avoid. I had just dropped off one of our more frustrating clients at the airport after enduring his complaints all morning, and I wasn't in any rush to get back to the office. It was a gloomy Thursday, and the prospect of an afternoon filled with contract reviews wasn't exactly thrilling. So I decided to take a break at a dull-looking diner about 2 miles from the airport. I planned to enjoy a leisurely lunch and maybe a couple of beers before heading back to the grind. Sitting in a booth, sipping on my beer and contemplating why it's so hard to find a decent burger, my attention was suddenly drawn to a couple entering the diner. They took a booth across the room from me, sitting side by side. The woman was a curvy brunette in her late 20s, dressed in a short skirt that highlighted her legs and a tight blue short-sleeved top. Her companion looked like he was trying too hard to be tough wearing jeans and a black leather jacket, but he was too scrawny to pull it off convincingly. My intense interest in this pair was justified when I realized the woman was Rachel, my sister-in-law, and the man with her was definitely not her husband, my brother Alex. Worse still, their behavior made it clear they were far more than just casual acquaintances. They ordered drinks, and before long they were all over each other, making out without any restraint. As I watched in disbelief, the guy slid his hand up her thigh until it disappeared under her skirt. Rachel broke their kiss, leaned back against the booth, and sighed. There was no question about whether I would confront them. That was a given. The real question was whether I could stop myself from beating the crap out of both of them right there in the diner. I'd never liked Rachel. I didn't like her when Alex first started dating her, and I was skeptical when he fell head over heels and announced after just 6 months that they were getting married. Alex was only 27, and I was sure he had no idea what he was getting into, but there was no way to talk him out of it. Rachel was his everything. To me, she was just a pretty, shallow, and selfish girl, not nearly as smart or as interesting as Alex himself. She was bubbly and outgoing, which my fun-loving brother adored, and it seemed to me that they both had the same favorite person, Rachel herself. Alex would do anything for her, and she loved it that way. Surprisingly, the first 3 years of their marriage seemed to go well, but the scene playing out in front of me suggested those happy days were over. The jerk she was with now had his other hand on Rachel's waist and was kissing her neck. Her eyes were closed, so she didn't see me approach. When I sat down across the table from them and said, "Well, hello, Rachel," what a surprise. Her eyes flew open, and her boyfriend quickly pulled his hands away, spinning around to face me. Rachel's face cycled through shock, horror, and panic in a matter of seconds. Her boyfriend just looked annoyed. Before he could say a word, I continued, "How have you been? How's Alex?" Then turning to the guy and extending my hand, I said, "I am John, Rachel's brother-in-law, her husband's brother." His eyes widened and he froze, ignoring my hand. Rachel started babbling, "John, what a surprise. This is Danny, an old friend." "You have your hand all the way up her skirt, Danny," I said with a smile. "Looks like you were getting her pretty worked up." Rachel gasped, clearly hoping I hadn't seen everything. Danny suddenly stood up, mumbled something, and without even glancing back at Rachel, hurried out of the diner. "Seems like a nice guy," I said to Rachel. "Why'd he leave so fast?" Inside, I was seething with rage. My brother adored this woman, would do anything for her, and this was how she repaid him, by messing around with a lowlife. Rachel looked terrified, her face pale. "John, I think you got the wrong idea. We were just—" Her voice trailed off, unable to complete the lie. I watched her for a moment before speaking. "You lousy, cheating piece of trash," I said in a low voice, though the fury in my tone was unmistakable. "Alex worships you, gives you everything you could ever want, but that's not enough for you, is it? You have to go behind his back with scumbags like this Danny. How long has this been going on? How many other guys are you screwing? What do you think Alex will say about all this?" "No, John, please," she pleaded, grabbing my hand. "Please don't tell him. I'll do anything." I just looked at her with disgust. Not tell him? Not tell my only brother that his wife is cheating on him? Are you out of your mind? Alex is my best friend, and you think I'd keep this from him? I pulled my hand away from hers. Why shouldn't I tell him? Doesn't he deserve to know who he's really married to? Her eyes were wild, clearly desperate. Listen, John, you can't tell him. It would destroy him. But if you promise you won't tell him, I leaned back, curious about what she might offer in exchange. Rachel seemed to reach a decision, and her expression changed. John, if you promise not to tell Alex, I'll tell you everything about Emma. She's been cheating on you too. She told me last week. I laughed bitterly. That's a good one, Rachel. I wondered what you'd come up with, but I never thought it would be something this ridiculous. You get points for creativity, though. Rachel just looked at me steadily. I'm not kidding, John. She's been seeing some guy from the gym for a couple of months now. Her certainty threw me off balance, but I knew it couldn't be true. Emma and I had been together since college, moved in together after graduation, and got married a year later. That made 7 happy years of marriage. Emma was devoted to me. She was smart, thoughtful, and the most honest person I knew. And she loved me. I was sure of it, as sure as I was of my own love for her. Rachel leaned forward, sensing my confusion. I'm telling you the truth, John. Emma told me about it last week. She said he was really well endowed. I watched her, trying to process what she was saying. Rachel had calmed down, like someone who knew exactly what they were doing, rather than someone spinning a wild tale. I still couldn't believe it, but suddenly, I couldn't dismiss it either. Emma had recently started going to the gym regularly, and there had been a few odd moments lately, times when she seemed distant. I looked back at Rachel, who seemed to be waiting for my next move. There was no way I would keep Rachel's affair from Alex, but she didn't need to know that, and I absolutely had to find out the truth about Emma. All right, Rachel, I said slowly. Maybe we can make a deal. I'm not about to let Emma cheat on me without consequences. If you can help me prove it, I won't tell Alex what I saw today. But you have to promise you won't see that loser Danny again or any other guy besides Alex. Her face lit up with relief. I swear, John, you have my word on it, like that meant anything. What do you want me to do? She asked. I want to hear all about Emma's affair in her own words. I'll give you a recorder to hide in your apartment. You invite Emma over, give her some wine, and have a girl talk. Get her to tell you everything. I want to know who the guy is, when and how it started, how often she's been with him, and why she thinks it's okay to cheat on me. As I spoke, I realized I was already halfway convinced that Rachel was telling the truth. The idea enraged me. Rachel nodded. Okay, John, I can do that. But you probably need to soften her up first. Make sure you share some juicy details about your own affair too, so it feels like a real intimate conversation. Is Danny the only one who's been getting into your pants? Or are there others? I asked sarcastically. Hez the only one, she said quickly, blushing. I didn't believe her for a second. 20 minutes later, I was driving back to the office, my mind full of dark thoughts about the possible end of Alex's marriage and mine. You might think my first call would have been to Alex to tell him what I'd seen, but I knew I couldn't do that. I had always been the steady older brother, while Alex was the charming, outgoing younger one. He had plenty of girlfriends in high school and college, though none of them lasted long because he could talk to anyone and charm the pants off them. But when Alex met Rachel, everything changed. Instead of being the confident guy who had women chasing after him, he turned into a lovesick fool. Within months, Rachel had him wrapped around her finger, and he was determined to marry her. No one could talk him out of it. He worshipped her, and to him, she could do no wrong. I once made the mistake of criticizing her mildly, and Alex blew up and didn't speak to me for a week. So I knew I couldn't tell him what I'd seen until I had undeniable proof. I still hoped, against all odds, that Rachel was lying and Emma was faithful to me. But it seemed less likely by the minute. When I got to my office, I made notes about what steps I'd have to take if the worst turned out to be true credit cards, selling the house, titles to the cars, etc. How I hoped I'd be able to tear that sheet of paper up in a few days. When I got home that evening, Emma was cheerfully humming in the kitchen, making dinner. She greeted me with a hug and a kiss and seemed like the same loving wife I'd been coming home to for the past 7 years. I knew I'd have to conceal my suspicions for a few days, but it wasn't easy. I loved her, but I was furious and hurt underneath. unsure if I should be. We chatted through dinner, but during dessert, when she mentioned her workout, I couldn't resist probing. "You've been so diligent with your workouts lately, honey," I said casually. "Did they start handing out free ice cream at the gym?" She laughed, but I noticed a slight flush on her face. "No, darling. I've just been enjoying how good it feels to get a good workout shower and then come home to my loving husband. Plus, those jeans you like were getting a bit tight. Now they fit perfectly." She smiled at me affectionately, and I was struck by how beautiful she was and how much I cared for her. God help her if she was cheating on me. God help me too. The next Monday was the day my marriage ended, even if the court calendar didn't reflect it. Rachel and I had set everything up. I got a small recorder for her to hide in her living room, and she arranged for Emma to come over for lunch. Emma had a day off, and Rachel didn't have a job. I spent that afternoon at the office, pretending to work, but my mind was entirely on what those two women were talking about and what it would mean for my life. At 4:30, Rachel called. "We're done. Emma just left." "Did she tell you everything?" I asked, still hoping against hope it was all a mistake. "Oh yes," Rachel giggled, clearly a bit drunk. "I told her about Danny, and she told me all about Matal about him. He's apparently very well endowed." I realized I was gripping the phone so tightly that my fingers ached. "All right," I said. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. When I arrived, Rachel handed me the recorder at the door. "Remember, John, you promised." "Yes, Rachel, Alex won't hear a word from me, and you can't let Emma know I taped her, or she'll be furious and tell Alex." I nodded, then turned and left. That evening was one of the most painful of my life. I knew I couldn't listen to the tape until Emma was asleep. Until then, I had to keep up the pretense of being a loving husband. Emma was still a bit tipsy, and after dinner she was feeling frisky. She dragged me to the bedroom, asking flirtatiously, "Got something for me tonight, love? Could I do this? Did I want to?" I realized it might be the last time I'd ever be intimate with Emma, and I was still hoping against all reason that she hadn't been unfaithful. So I followed her into the bedroom, and we had sex. It wasn't making love, at least not for me. My heart was too torn and my mind too troubled. Emma seemed oblivious, though. She was eager and responsive. For me, it was bittersweet pleasurable, but incredibly sad. We rested for a while in each other's arms, then did it again. A few minutes later, Emma was fast asleep beside me. I sat in the guest room, closed the door behind me, and listened to the tape. The first few minutes of conversation between Rachel and Emma were casual and breezy. Rachel kept the wine flowing, and after a while she confessed to her affair with Danny. It was clear Emma knew about it already. Rachel was just sharing the details to soften her up. Then Rachel turned the conversation to Emma. "So, spill the beans, sweetie," she giggled. "All I know is that you met him at the gym and that he's, quite gifted." My blood ran cold as I heard Emma's voice laugh and say, "Oh yes, Hez amazing, by far the biggest I've ever seen or felt." She giggled and went on, "I didn't think it would fit, but oh my God, does it ever?" Both women laughed hard. I stopped the tape, leaning back in my chair. My marriage was over. Did I even want to hear the rest? I considered letting my lawyer listen to it, but I decided I needed to hear it all, face it head on, and figure out what the rest of my life would look like. "How did it start?" Rachel asked. Emma sighed and said, "The first thing you need to know is that I never meant to cheat on John. I still can't believe I'm doing it, and I feel awful about it. We're so happy together, and I know he'd lose it if he knew. But I guess I've got a bad case of BTF." She laughed. Rachel asked, "BTF? What's that?" Emma laughed again. "Let me explain. Just pass me some more wine. You know how I've been going to the gym for a while now? Working out is boring, but I didn't want to get out of shape and have John lose interest. Anyway, a few months ago I noticed this new trainer, Matt. He's not very tall, but is broad-shouldered and really built. He flirts with all the women, helping them with machines, racking weights, spotting them, that sort of thing. One day I saw him talking to Susan Martin, this really attractive woman I know from work. She's got the perfect body. Well, I watched them chatting, then he disappeared into his office. A few minutes later, Susan quietly followed him in. I smiled to myself, knowing what was going on, but I didn't think much of it. Later, I was finishing up my workout when Susan came into the locker room looking, well, satisfied. She had that dreamy-eyed look like she'd just had the time of her life. I said, "Hi, Susan, you look happy," and she grinned at me and said, "Oh yeah, I've got a bad case of BTF." I asked BTF, and she giggled and told me it stood for big tool fever. She said Matt was amazing, the best she'd ever had, and they'd been seeing each other whenever they could fit it in. That got my attention, but I still didn't plan on doing anything about it. Susan's single, she can do whatever she wants, but I'm happily married. Still, over the next few weeks I got more curious about Matt and started flirting back when he flirted with me. He'd brush against me or touch my shoulder while helping me. Then one day, I was doing bench presses and the gym was nearly empty. He came and stood just behind my head, spotting me. As I looked up, there was this enormous bulge in his shorts. He just smiled down at me, knowing what I was looking at. I almost dropped the bar, but I finished my reps. As I put the bar back on the rack, he took my hand and slid it over his shorts. It felt as big as it looked and rock hard. Then he gently pulled me to my feet, looked around to make sure no one was there, and led me into his office. I wasn't thinking, I was dazed. He locked the door, pulled off his shorts, and we had, well, let's just say it was unforgettable. "Wow," Rachel said, clearly impressed. "And I assume you kept seeing him?" That day I drifted out of his office and into the shower, feeling completely out of it. By the time I got home, the guilt was killing me. I couldn't believe I had cheated on John, and I was terrified he'd see it in my eyes. But he didn't. That night was normal. He didn't suspect a thing. He even wanted to be intimate, but I was afraid he'd notice something was off, so I said I was too tired. The next night, though, I made sure he was completely satisfied. For 2 weeks I avoided the gym, convinced I couldn't resist Matt if I saw him again. Eventually I convinced myself it had been a one-time mistake. I was a grown woman with a wonderful husband, and I could resist him. So I went back, and the first couple of times, everything was fine. Matt flirted a little, but nothing more. I thought I was over it. But a week later he caught me again at the bench, and the gym was empty, and, well, you can guess what happened. "You were back in his office," Rachel said. "And it was even better," Emma replied dreamily. "I can't really explain it, Rachel. I love being with John. We've always been good together. I've never even been tempted to cheat before. There's a guy at work who's very attractive and a big flirt, but he never got anywhere with me. I just wasn't interested. But with Matt, it's like nothing I've ever experienced before. I can't believe I'm telling you this," she giggled, clearly feeling the effects of the wine. "It's not that Matt is special as a person, or that I am interested in him beyond the physical, but the sex, it's like a gift from above." She laughed again, and Rachel joined her. I sat there, the anger boiling within me as I listened to the rest of the tape. Once Matt had her the second time, Emma stopped resisting altogether. She'd been seeing him 2 to 3 times a week for nearly a month, and there was no indication she was planning to stop. In fact, she mentioned that she'd been enjoying sex with me even more lately, perhaps because the thrill of her affair was a turn-on. It was clear that her so-called big tool fever had obliterated any guilt she might have felt about betraying me, the man who loved her deeply and who had taken his marriage vows seriously. It took me hours to process everything, and by 2:30 a.m. I finally went to bed in the guest room. I couldn't stand being next to her, not after what I'd heard. I slipped into the master bedroom to grab some clothes for the next day without waking her. At 6:30 a.m., I was up and out the door, leaving behind a brief, cold note, "Have an early meeting. Sorry, forgot to mention it last night." At the office, I made 2 copies of the tape. By 8:30, I was on the phone. My best friend from college worked at a law firm downtown. "Hey, Jack, it's John. I need a huge favor. Could you get me an hour this morning with the toughest, most ruthless divorce lawyer in your firm?" There was a pause, and then he said, "Oh, no, John. Not you and Emma. I'm so sorry." We talked for a bit longer, and at exactly 11:15, Jack showed me into the office of Helen Lawson, a senior partner at his firm. Jack had warned me she was formidable. When she swims, sharks flee, he'd said, and Helen's icy demeanor and firm handshake confirmed it. I was already glad she'd be on my side and not Emma's. I played her and Jack the tape. After just a few moments, Helen picked up her phone and said, "Hold all my calls," and we listened to the entire recording. When it was over, we sat in silence for a minute before she said, "Okay, what do you want?" "I want to divorce her on the grounds of adultery. None of this irreconcilable differences nonsense. I'll be fair about the savings, but I want the house, and she has to take back her maiden name. She doesn't deserve to be Mrs. John Carter any longer." Helen nodded, looking at me intently. Then she asked, "Excuse me, John, can you give me and Jack a few minutes to discuss this?" 5 minutes later, I was back in her office, and she was ready to go. "The divorce will be straightforward, and she won't refuse your terms. But you should know that the tape won't be admissible since she wasn't aware of it. However, your sister-in-law can testify about the authenticity if needed." I took a deep breath. "This is where it gets complicated," I said, and explained about Rachel's affair with Danny, her offer to me, and the first part of the tape. "I haven't told my brother Alex yet, but I have to. He's going to be devastated, and I can't keep it from him. In fact," I added with a hint of irony, "I wonder, Helen, if you'd consider handling his divorce as well." She looked at Jack, then back at me. "Let's start by hearing the first part of the tape," she suggested. I played it for them, and then Helen and Jack huddled again for a few minutes. When we reconvened, she said, "You and your brother sure know how to pick them," but quickly apologized when she saw my expression. "Sorry, John, that was uncalled for. Here's the situation: the tape won't be admissible in your case because Emma wasn't aware of it being made. However, Rachel could be subpoenaed and made to testify about what Emma told her, so it shouldn't make much difference. Once Emma's lawyer hears the tape, they won't have much room to maneuver. In Alex's case, the tape is admissible because Rachel knew she was being recorded, so her divorce will be easier as long as he's reasonable. Additionally, we can sue the gym and Matt. Matt might not have much money, but the gym will want to avoid a public scandal. We could be looking at a settlement in the high six figures, maybe even $1 million or more." She smiled briefly, though her demeanor remained tough as nails. Helen said she'd get the divorce papers started, and Jack walked me out. "I'm really sorry, John. Helen will get you everything you want, I'm sure of it, but I hate that this is happening." I tried to smile. "It's okay, Jack. It just means you and I will have more time to play tennis." I thanked him and left. The rest of the day was a blur of tasks: arranging for a locksmith to change the house locks at 4:30, setting up a dinner date with Alex to avoid being home when Emma returned, canceling her credit cards, and opening a separate bank account. I also wrote her a note. It took several tries. Saying goodbye to the love of your life isn't easy, even in these circumstances. When I finally finished, I put it in an envelope with Emma's name on the front and took it home. The locksmith finished around 5:15. I had a beer by myself in the kitchen, then taped the note to the front door, locked it, and left. I knew Emma would be home between 6:00 and 6:30. I wondered what she'd do first: try the door and find her key didn't work, or read the note. "Our marriage is over. You're free to do whatever you want with Matt and his gift. I've had the locks changed. If you want your clothes and personal items, contact my attorney." I left Helen's name and number. "She'll arrange for you to access the house when I'm not there. I won't be talking to you again. You broke my heart. I loved you as much as a man can love a woman, and I looked forward to growing old together. Too bad our marriage vows didn't mean as much to you as some fling. When Alex joined me for dinner, he could tell right away that something was wrong. After we ordered, I took a deep breath and just said it: Emma's been cheating on me. I'm divorcing her." He stared at me, mouth agape. "Oh my God, John, not Emma? Are you sure?" But he didn't need to ask. My face told him everything. "Do you want to talk about it?" I did. Over dinner, I shared my hurt and despair with my best friend. He was 100 on my side, and it meant everything. Towards the end of the meal, I said, "There's one thing I haven't told you. Rachel is the one who helped me get proof." She recorded a conversation with Emma, and Emma confessed everything. He looked at me sympathetically. "I'm so sorry, John, and I hope this doesn't make you mad, but I feel so lucky to have Rachel. I know you've never been a big fan of hers, but I had to cut him off. Hearing him praise Rachel, knowing what I knew, was killing me. Alex, wait. Don't say anything else. Let me pay the bill, and then I need you to come back to my place. There was a note from Emma under the door when we got there, but I didn't read it. I led Alex into the guest room. Listen, Alex, this is serious. You know I love you, and I'd never do anything to hurt you, right? He looked at me warily. This wasn't how we usually talked. Of course, John, what's going on? You need to hear the tape Rachel made. Just listen to it, and it'll be in the other room. I rewound the tape, pushed the recorder over to him, and left. I couldn't stand to be there while he listened. There was silence at first, then a crash. I figured Alex had thrown something. I heard him pacing, the tape still playing, and finally there was quiet. He stormed into the kitchen, his eyes wild. You bastard, John. You must have enjoyed this, knowing the truth about Rachel and keeping it from me, letting me go on about how great she is. No, Alex, it wasn't. This must feel so good for you, you jerk. You've always hated her, and now you can smile and say I told you so for the rest of your life. I stood up, my voice rising. Alex, do you think I'm having such a great day? What did I just find out about Emma? You think this is fun for me? I glared at him, and gradually his anger faded. His shoulders sagged, and he unclenched his fists. He sat down at the table, looking broken. I imagined Id looked the same way lately. Sorry, John, he finally said. I know you're hurting, too. It's just you obviously knew. Why didn't you tell me, Alex? I said as gently as I could. You know how you are about Rachel. You never would have believed me. Remember when we fought after I criticized her once? I found out about Rachel a week ago and knew I couldn't tell you. You had to hear it yourself. I only got the tape yesterday. We spent the rest of the night talking, drinking, and sharing our pain. I told Alex everything how I'd seen Rachel with Danny, the deal she offered, the tape, and my meeting with Helen Lawson. She's handling my divorce, and she can take care of yours too if you want. She says our cases are solid. We talked until late, and then Alex crashed in my guest room. He couldn't face Rachel. The phone rang several times, but we didn't answer, and eventually I just unplugged it. The next few days passed in a blur. Emma left messages, crying and begging to talk, but I never answered. She showed up at my office a few times, but I made sure to avoid her. A couple of times I saw her car parked outside our house, so I just drove past and stayed away until she left. Helen Lawson did her job well. The divorce papers were served, and despite some initial resistance from Emma's lawyer, we eventually set a court date. They tried to claim no adultery had taken place, but once Helen sent them a copy of the tape, that argument disappeared. They pointed out that the tape was inadmissible, but Helen didn't even bother responding to that. As the court date neared, Emma's lawyer finally called to ask for a settlement conference. The day after hearing the tape, Alex moved out of his place with Rachel and into my guest room. We went over when she wasn't home, packed his things, and got out. I don't want to see her or hear what she has to say, he told me. His eyes started to water, and I turned away, knowing exactly how he felt. Rachel left a few angry, cursing messages at home, a stark contrast to Emma's tearful ones. After a day or two, I started screening calls, deleting any messages from either of them. Rachel called Alex at work and sent him letters, but he never responded. Helen was handling his divorce too, and we just let her do her job. Surprisingly, the lawsuits against Matt and the gym were resolved first. Matt disappeared, leaving no trace, but the gym, eager to avoid bad publicity, settled for $1.2 million. I signed a confidentiality agreement and walked away with a check larger than I'd ever seen. In less than 10 weeks, Alex and I were living like two bachelors, going out to eat, catching games, and talking over beers. We talked about Emma and Rachel, about our lives with them, and about the future. It wasn't easy to believe that we'd find someone new, but we were helping each other move forward. I reassured Alex that Rachel's actions weren't his fault, just as he told me Emma's cheating didn't reflect on me. We might not have fully believed each other, but it helped to hear it. Alex's divorce was finalized first. He made it clear he wouldn't speak to Rachel, so Helen handled everything. Rachel fought for more money at first, but with the tape she had no leverage. The day Alex signed the papers, he smiled grimly, shook Helen's hand, and thanked her. Then he went to the bathroom, and I could hear him crying through the door. 3 weeks later, it was my turn. We met on a Friday, Emma, me, and our lawyers. Emma's lawyer insisted on 2 conditions: that I drop adultery as the grounds for divorce and that I meet with Emma privately before signing the papers. I told Helen I was willing to see Emma but not willing to drop the adultery claim. Eventually, we agreed that Emma could try to convince me. If she succeeded, we'd change it to irreconcilable differences. In a strange way, I was looking forward to what Emma had to say. Maybe I was a masochist, but after 11 years together, I couldn't just walk away without one final conversation. Emma was already in the conference room when I arrived, wearing a dress she knew I loved. Her hair was shorter and she looked beautiful but pale. "Okay, Emma, it's your meeting," I said, trying to stay neutral despite the emotions churning inside me. "Just don't tell me how much you love me, and don't say it was just sex." She flushed, tears welling up. "John, I'm so sorry, but how can I not say those things? I messed up, I was selfish, and I hurt you. But it was just sex, nothing but a stupid, stupid impulse. You can't imagine how many times I've wished I hadn't done it." "Yes, but you did," I said, keeping my voice steady. Just being in the same room with her, knowing this was the end, broke my heart all over again. I turned to the window, unwilling to let her see my pain. "John, it meant nothing to me. It doesn't change how much I love you." I let her talk, hearing the pleading tone I once loved, but not hearing anything new. She had nothing to say that could change what had happened. After a while, I turned back to the table and sat down across from her. "I still love you, Emma, but it's over. You took from me, from us, the most precious thing we had aside from love, the trust between us. How could I ever make love to you again, wondering if you were thinking about me or Matt? How could I live with you, always questioning where you were, what you were doing, who you were with?" She had no answer, just tears. "Please, John, please. Couldn't you give me one more chance? Think about this. What if I had met someone with fantastic looks and started seeing her on the side for a few weeks? Not someone I cared about, just someone who gave me pleasure that I never got from you. Then you found out. Could you stay with me? Could you get past the betrayal, the doubts, the fears that you weren't enough?" She looked up, tears streaming. "John, I don't need to think about it. I've thought about it for weeks. If the situation were reversed, I couldn't forgive you. I know that. But I'm asking you to be stronger than I could ever be and give me a chance to make it up to you, to show you how sorry I am." We stared at each other in silence, thinking about all we had been to each other. Slowly I stood up, hating her for what she'd done and for putting the decision on me. "I don't know if I can't do it or won't do it, but I'm not that stronger person. Goodbye, Emma." I paused by the door, giving her a chance for the last word, but she was sobbing, her head down, and said nothing. Helen was waiting for me down the hall, a surprisingly gentle look on her face. "Let her have irreconcilable differences," I said gruffly. "It doesn't matter to me." Later, at the kitchen table, Alex and I were talking. "Listen," I said, "I've made some plans." He nodded, and I continued. "I've got nearly $800,000 left from the settlement after lawyer fees. I've invested all but $50,000 in safe places for the future. But the last $50,000 is for us. I've rented a 2-bedroom condo in Maui for 4 weeks, starting in 2 weeks. Tell your office you're taking some time off. We're going to be 2 carefree bachelors." Maui was a blast, even for 2 guys recovering from broken hearts. We got sun, played tennis, swam and drank, though we kept each other from going too far. Every day we got a little fitter, a little further from the nightmare we'd been living. And let me say, God bless my charming brother. Despite everything, he got his confidence back, and we had a lot of female companionship. His favorite move was to spot 2 attractive women, drag me over to them, smile, and say, "Hi, ladies. My brother John and I would love to buy you a drink." 9 times out of 10, it worked. I ended up with about 5 different women during those 4 weeks, and I'm sure Alex's number was higher. Mostly it was fun, light, and casual. The first few times I was distracted by thoughts of Matt, even though both he and Emma were thousands of miles away. But it got easier each time, and the women didn't seem to notice. One-night stands may not be for everyone, but they were what we needed at the time. Only one woman was different, Megan, a tall Irish redhead. We met like the others, drinks, dinner, dancing, and back to my place. But later that night, around 3 a.m., I woke up and started thinking about Emma, our life together, and what we'd lost. I started crying quietly, and before I knew it, Megan was holding me saying, "It's okay, let it out." I was embarrassed, but she didn't let go. Finally, in response to her gentle urging, I told her everything. By the time I was done, the sun was rising. We made breakfast together, and she shared her own story, no cheating, just a husband who became so distant that their marriage crumbled. After we ate, we went back to bed, and this time it wasn't just sex. It was something deeper, more intimate. My one-night stand with Megan turned into 4 nights. When she left, Alex seemed concerned. "Come on, John, time to meet some new ladies," he urged. "That one was special," I said quietly. "I believe you," he said, "but she's gone home now, and we have 10 more days here. Let's not stop having fun yet." He dragged me off to the tennis court, then the pool, and by that evening we were chatting with 2 secretaries from Los Angeles. That night, they went back to their hotel, but the next day, Sarah joined me in my room. 8 months after Maui, Alex and I went out to dinner at a steakhouse we liked. Just after we ordered, Alex leaned forward. "Don't turn around, okay?" 2 couples just sat down across the room. One of them is Emma and some guy. My heart started pounding. I waited a few seconds, then casually turned and looked. Emma had already seen us and was looking steadily at me. I gave her a polite smile and wave, and she smiled back. Then I turned back to Alex. "This is the first time you've seen her since the divorce, right?" he asked. "How are you holding up?" I nodded. I didn't think I'd react this strongly, but I guess the surprise has something to do with it. "Just do me a favor. Alex, don't tell me anything about her. I don't want to know." "That's fine, John," he replied, launching into a story about a coworker who'd been flirting with him. We were finishing our coffee when I felt a hand on my shoulder. Emma's voice said, "How are you, John?" I stood up, looking into her eyes. "Hello, Emma. How about a dance for old time's sake?" she asked. And I found myself agreeing. How good she felt in my arms, how beautiful she looked, how much I remembered the happier times. We made small talk work, the weather, but then we fell silent, lost in the past. Towards the end of the dance, Emma pulled back slightly. "How are you, John, really?" "I'm doing all right. Some days are better than others. Seeing you tonight, dancing with you, it's bringing up a lot of feelings." She looked at me intently. "I miss you every day, John. Being in your arms again. It's overwhelming." I didn't know what to say, so I stayed silent. The music ended, but she wasn't ready to let go. "Do you ever wonder if you made the right decision?" "I'll be honest, Emma. I think about you all the time, but mostly I wonder why you made the wrong decision." When I dropped Alex off later, he asked, "Are you sure you're okay, John?" "Yeah, it was a shock, but it was bound to happen eventually. We still on for tennis tomorrow?" He nodded. "Yep. See you then." That night, I got home late and tried to be quiet as I undressed in the dark. But when I climbed into bed, Megan rolled over towards me. "How was dinner with Alex?" "It was nice." "Weird, actually. I ran into Emma. Maybe it's just as well I didn't come tonight. I might have scratched her eyes out." "Do me a favor, John. Just hold me for a while." I smiled in the darkness. "I'll do better than that, Megan. Come here and let me make everything better." We embraced, and I breathed in her scent as she kissed my neck, the pain of the past easing just a bit more. Thank you for watching this intense story of betrayal and revenge. How would you handle finding out about a partner's affair? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories like this one.